Good day, everybody. Zack here with RevZilla, and welcome to another episode of Daily Rider, where we learn about motorcycles as we ride. Our guest this time around is BMW's S1000RR. That is the bleeding edge of BMW sport bike technology, 205 horsepower and just about every performance bell and or whistle that you could ask for. And if you pay $22,000, you could have heated grips and carbon fiber wheels as well. Now, the RR has a reputation among showroom superbikes for being one of the best and easiest to ride regularly. And since that's what we're all about here on Daily Rider, we're about to find out if that reputation lives on. Buckle up that helmet, it's time to ride. Alrighty, everybody, here we have it, BMW S1000RR. I suppose the first thing I should mention is that this is technically a 2020 BMW S1000RR, not a 2022 RR, which hopefully the description reflects. It's basically the same motorcycle. Pricing is slightly different for the option packages, and the paint schemes, I think, are slightly different. There's only one main mechanical difference as far as I can tell, and that's the front brake calipers, for which the supplier changed. So these are Hayes calipers, I believe, manufactured with BMW logos on them, and the new ones are made by Nissan. So I won't be able to speak to the Nissan calipers. I do apologize. But as you can see, big beefy brakes, braided lines, Marzocchi fork. What else we got here that's kind of interesting? Well, before we go too much further, I should say that this bike has the M package on it, which is why it's got this nifty white, red, blue paint scheme, and it's got these sexy carbon fiber wheels. Not sure how well you can see that. They're a little dirty. I guess I should have cleaned them. I've been riding this bike. I'm not going to apologize for riding it, of course. But yeah, pretty sexy piece of kit there. And this bike also has the premium and dynamic packages. So it's basically fully loaded, which is why it costs 22 grand. The M package also comes with this M seat, which we'll talk a little bit more about later. Also, the heated grips, expanded ride modes, stuff like that. But as far as stuff we want to talk about right here, there's one more thing I wanted to mention. This bike came from BMW for some reason with GP shift. So you lift up to go to first gear, you press down to go to second, third, fourth, fifth, etc. And it's pretty common for modern superbikes to be able to do this, but you can see there's a hole here. So if you undo this little connection here and you switch it to this side, then the shaft connecting to the transmission up here would be on this side, and then you would lift up to go to second, third, fourth, down to go to third, second, first. Standard street shift. So this is a racetrack shifting setup, and I figured I'd leave it. Why not? A couple other nifty little things while we're in this neighborhood. You can see this has a shock sensor here to detect the stroke of the shock, so the electronic suspension can work with this data that this little guy collects. Also, I think it's interesting that the rear sets, instead of the bracket going to the side of the frame and the bolts going in like this, BMW decided to run the bosses longitudinally and have the bolts go in this way, which I think is actually pretty smart, because when you're pushing on the pegs, then you're pulling on the bolt this way instead of pulling on it kind of sideways, you know what I mean? And yeah, other than that, it's a pretty fancy super bike. I guess let's get riding, right? Flick on this big old TFT screen here and fire it up. And another interesting feature of BMWs these days is the adaptive tachometer. So you can see red line is at what, 7,200 RPM right now. And as the bike warms up, the red line will climb. You can see it go up to 7,500 RPM, and so eventually it'll climb up and be at whatever it is, 14 and change maybe, or yeah, something like that, I think. But yeah, kind of a nifty feature to remind you that the engine's cold, I suppose. All right, have we talked enough about this thing? Let's pull in the clutch, lift up on the shifter, pop it into first gear, and hit the road. A little bit of a chilly morning here, so I'm going to fire up the heated grips. Actually, let's start with level 2. We'll see if that's too much. More to the point, let's talk about specs, shall we? Get those out of the way. I mentioned 200 horsepower. I believe it's 205 horsepower claimed at 13,000 RPM and 83 foot-pounds of torque, maybe at 11,000. So Makes peak power way up top, as high rev and inline 4-cylinder engines often do. It weighed in on the Daily Rider leaderboard scales. Leaderboard, why did I say that? The Daily Rider scales, that is, at 437 pounds, which I believe is 10 pounds over what BMW claims for the M package bike, but still, that's pretty light for a 200 horsepower super bike. 437, that's not bad at all. And that was with a full 4.4 gallons of fuel in the tank. As we peel down toward the freeway here, the last spec we usually talk about is seat height, which we didn't catch a red light today, but 32.4 inches, I believe, is the spec on the seat. And it's pretty reasonable. The M seat that I have on this bike is the same height as the stock seat, I'm told. There is a high seat you can get that's an inch higher if you like, if you're particularly tall. All right, here we go down the freeway at freeway speeds. Of course, any self-respecting BMW has cruise control, obviously, which is a brilliant system. The BMW cruise control is so good. Little rocker switch, push forward to set it, push forward to add MPH, pull back to reduce MPH, so good. Also, the bike is fairly comfortable doing this kind of thing. You don't have a ton of wind protection because that's not what this thing is made to do, but there's just enough legroom for me to be comfortable for a, you know, a half day or even an all day ride at 6'2", and I think that they've done a pretty good job balancing that aspect of it. And you know, you lean forward with a bunch of weight on your hands because it was a super bike, and if you're surprised by that, then you shouldn't be. While we've got a little bit of open road ahead of us here, good time to talk about the engine, because we're not going to be able to experiment with the actual speed of the S1000 to any real extent here on public roads. But the roll-on power on the freeway I find to be very, very good. The engine between about 4,000 and 6,000, 6,500 is really strong. And at this speed, if you need to go a little bit faster, you just roll on the throttle. Look how fast it adds speed. It's just remarkable. And that's top gear. It's not particularly buzzy, it's not particularly uncomfortable, and it's not even in the meat of where it actually makes power. And yet when you goose it a little bit, it really just like surges forward in a way that's super satisfying. And that speaks to, a little bit anyway, to the shift cam technology in the S1000RR engine. Basically what it does is it has one cam for low RPM and one cam for high RPM, and it shifts from one to the other at 9,000 RPM maybe, I think. And that means the engine is designed to work well at both low and high RPMs from a mechanical standpoint, not just from the intake stacks or the fuel tuning or anything like that. There's actual mechanical bits in there that help it work better at low RPM and better at high RPM. The downside, I'm not sure exactly if this is an emissions thing or if it's actually a shift cam remnant in the engine, but there's a huge hole in the power between 6,500 and 8,500 RPM, something like that, around 7,000, 8,000. There's like a, it just falls on its face, which would be a pretty big problem if you were trying to cut a lap time, I assume. I'll have to try and get, I don't know, have to try and take this sucker to a track day to experiment. But anyway, it's a little bit of a bummer considering what the bike is. And lucky enough we have a red light here so we can experiment with an actual rip up through the revs a little bit anyway, and we see if we can feel that hole at around 7,000 RPM. So here we go, wide open, pulls a wheelie against wheelie control. Hard to notice it in first gear, but it lifts the front wheel up at about 4,000 RPM and holds it against the wheelie control, and then at 6,500 or 7 it falls back down and it goes and then when it gets to 8,000 it goes and rips up on that, or 9,000, it rips up on that upper cam. It's very exciting. And just like that, our freeway stint is almost over, and we haven't really talked about, what do we usually talk about? Fuel mileage? Okay. I got, let me see, I think my low mileage number was 33.5 and my high was 36, something like that. I think the computer usually shows high 30s. The fuel light has been coming on at about 100 miles, so the range is not great. But with a 4.4 gallon tank and 35 miles to the gallon, you still could go 150 miles, right, theoretically. So The range isn't terrible, it's just not awesome. I mean, my guess is that after 110, 125 miles, the fuel light's going to be on and you're going to want to take a break from sitting on this thing anyway. But, you know, that's just a loose prediction. Last thing is mirrors. We usually talk about here. Mirrors on this bike are pretty good. I mean, they're smooth and I think they look okay. They're just too small. I often find myself checking over my shoulder to make sure there isn't a car there because I feel like I can't see particularly well in the mirrors, unfortunately. So, yeah, I don't know. I think it's, I'm not sure what to give them. Like 3 out of 5 stars, maybe? The design's good. It just, I can't see all that much out of them. Okay, off we go into the neighborhood here. We'll talk about round town manners. And I'm going to turn down the heating grips. I'm a little too toasty. Yeah, here we go. Ugh! All right, we got one. Not bad. Took a little body English, but we did it. Put my foot down on that one. No good. In general, though, the S1000RR manners around town are pretty good. I find the quick shifter works pretty well, both up and down, even at low speed, which is a nice feature. And cable operated clutch, so you get pretty direct feel there. And the brakes are very, very strong. Maybe we'll, ooh, that was a good one. Maybe we'll play around with the brakes a little bit later. But they're just the way I want brakes to be. I love BMW brakes. They're too sharp, too abrupt for some people. But the bite on this bike is definitely softer than previous BMWs, but still has that massive power and really good feel when you really clamp down the lever, which I very much appreciate. It's got really good grunt. All right, into Lover's Lane here. You can probably guess what the passenger report will be. Very little legroom, and the seat is there, but not a ton of thought was put into it. Not a hugely comfortable bike for any normal-sized human being. I don't know. I'd probably just take the passenger pegs off. Figure the S1000RR rides alone. That's your best bet, I think. But, you know, do whatever you like. Glorious. It's like an MT-09. It just does those little low-speed wheelies. Very impressive. All right, dipping into our Curvy Road section of the Daily Rider ride here. And the S1000RR is razor sharp, as you'd expect. And I'm in road mode. I haven't even gotten to ride modes yet, holy smokes. There are 4 normal sort of street riding modes on this bike: rain, road, dynamic, and race. And with each of those modes, throttle response changes a little bit, the ABS traction control parameters change a little bit, and the electronic suspension damping control changes a little bit. So road is sort of one of the more reasonable ones, as you would expect, or one of the sort of softer, easier going modes, and it's still pretty stiff. You get a lot of feedback, and in some ways that's good. You know, you're riding a super bike around, you probably want flip and feedback, right? Well, this bike provides it, and even more so if we flick it over to race. And we'll let the system reset there, and it turns the compression damping up even more. You can feel bumps in the road even more. It feels very racy, and again, I like that. I wish that the more relaxed damping modes in the suspension would allow for a little bit freer movement, just because the technology's there. Just make it super loose and soft if you can, right? Maybe, I don't know. But I appreciate that when you crank it up, it feels pretty cranked up. It's uncompromising. It feels like it wants to go way faster than we're allowed to go on this particular road. Overall, though, it feels very well put together, and those carbon wheels, I think, help it feel a little bit more agile too. You know, unsprung weight, rotating mass is down. It's pretty nifty, and yeah, you're gonna want to go fast, I believe. All right, as we pull up to this traffic light here, I don't know how long we have, but we can try and talk about the dash a little bit. Another thing this bike has is hill hold assist. If you pump the brake lever once, you can see you get this little logo there, and it's stuck on the hill. Pump the brake lever again, it turns off. It's kind of a, I don't know, I've kind of appreciated it. Been stuck at some lights that are pointed downhill or uphill, and you can just kind of like leave your hand or foot off the brake. You don't have to worry about it. And if you want it to turn off, then you just pump the lever again and it goes away. I think it's kind of cool. I don't know. Anyway, the dash. Do we have time to talk about the dash? Who gets green light next? Ah, it's us. Okay, we don't have time. We're gonna have to make it the next traffic light, I suppose. This section of road right here is where we're really gonna feel like we're riding a super bike around. It's so bumpy, and there's 4-point-something inches of suspension travel, and there's, you know, the springs are, you know, it's not designed to be comfortable from a suspension standpoint. It's designed to tell you what the road's doing underneath you, and boy does it do that on a city street, let me tell you. You know, overall, I think my takeaway from this late model BMW S1000 RR is that it has continued the reputation that it built about 10 years ago, or a little more now, for being such a reasonable ride around every day super bike. And I think other super bikes have caught up in that respect, you know. I mean, when the S1000 RR first came out, a lot of bikes like a Yamaha R1 or a Ducati, you know, 1198 or Panigale, the first Panigale, I mean, they were just like hot and angry in traffic and just difficult, and now not so much, you know. I mean, gearing might be a little weird, but a Panigale V4 is a pretty reasonable bike to ride around. It's smooth at low speed. The R1 frame won't burn your legs anymore. So other companies have caught up, and I think that it makes sense because they probably realize that there's people have an appreciation for what this bike does well. And one of the things it does well is trot around off the throttle. Oh, yeah, go for it. Right hand turn from the left lane. That's a tricky move. This BMW does keep that reputation up of being a good super bike to ride around on the reg. I just, you know, at the end of the day, it's still a super bike, and I'm never gonna be that impressed with how comfortable a super bike is to ride around or ride to work or something like that. Because if I were impressed by how easy it was to ride to work, I'd probably be disappointed that it wasn't a meaner machine and didn't feel like it was gonna rip my arms off on a racetrack, which is what a super bike is supposed to do. So I think it's appropriate. I think it's good. It's a good bike. I guess it should be. Okay, the test that no one has been asking for, least of all BMW, who owns these carbon fiber wheels. The off-road check. Oh my goodness. Oh Jesus. I don't know if we should do this. Okay, here we go. It's a little muddy. Oh my God, what am I doing? Oh God. Oh geez. Oh, it's so slippery. Oh my goodness. Steady, steady, steady. Oh God. I'm not going to go in the puddle because I'm probably going to tip over. Everything's cool. Everything's cool. Oh, ha, 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 ha. Oh, I just want it to be over. I hate it. Gravel and super sports tires and whew. Okay. All right. So there you have it. BMW S1000 RR down a dirt road next to a puddle. A little wheelie jump thing. I don't want to land in the puddle. I want to be careful to a certain extent. You can call me a ween if you want to, but I mean, come on, I don't want to go too crazy with this bike, geez Louise and cheese. And we'll see if this bike will wheelie. Something tells me it will. Alley-oop. Whoop. Goodness gracious, will it ever wheelie? Okay, as we wait at this last stoplight here, we can back it in, but you have to dig down in the menu. We still haven't done the dash yet. Settings, racetrack on, okay, return to menu, select Race Pro 1 riding mode. You can turn traction control back on. Don't need to do any more wheelies. So now in Race Pro 1, you can see you can adjust DTC, dynamic traction control, on the fly here. We'll turn that up just because we don't need to mess with that. This little rocker switch here. And in Race Pro 1, I believe I have rear ABS turned off. And let's see if this works. Can you back it in? S1000RR edition. Oh, yeah. That was a beefy one. I like it. Excellent. Probably from all the mud caked on the tires. Let's do another one. No traffic. Why not? Oh, that is very, very fun. All right, well, Race Pro 1 riding mode is a perfect segue to the U-turn challenge, of course. And we've got 2 parking spaces between this Yukon and that Audi A3. And I don't think we're gonna make it, but let's go for it anyway. Full lock. Ha, 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 ha. Full lock, no feet down. No dice. Looks like maybe 3 parking spaces. You could pull it off, but I don't know. All right, well, the cooling fan's on for the bike. The cooling fan is on for me also, if we're honest. I'm gonna stop in the shade here, and we're just gonna run through the dash real quick. So I did go to Race Pro 1, and as a reminder, the way to get away from that is you tap down on this menu button here. That's how you get down to the set of menus. You go down into settings. The first option here is a racetrack and configuration. While we have it on, we can jump into configuration. I can show you what it looks like here in all these ride modes. It's pretty wild. So you have Race Pro 1, Race Pro 2. You navigate vertically with this click wheel here, which is pretty nifty. And you can see you can adjust engine braking, traction control, wheelie control, ABS, and then manual settings for the damping in the suspension. It's very, very in-depth, as it should be for a bike like this. If you're going to do it right. You can select sport mode, which will pull up lean angle for your ride, as well as brake pressure and a different look at the dash, that kind of thing. There are a couple other options there as well. And then if you go over to My Vehicle, this is where you sort of basic specs of the bike. So you got tire pressure monitor system. The coolant temperature is at 225 Fahrenheit, which is very warm. Yeah, and then if you rock over here, you have, this is trip 1, trip 2. This is one of my complaints about this dash, is that trips are very they're kind of buried here. You got to dig way down to see your trip computer, or reset it anywhere to see all the parameters. And if you want to return to the main screen, you can always just hold up on this menu rocker switch here, and it will return back to the main screen. With one little tap of the upper part of the menu button, you can also cycle through stuff at the top of the dash there. So trip 1 is 75 miles. Average fuel for trip 1 according to the computer is 38.5. Trip time, TPMS, intake air temperature, and you can tune what you want to show up there too. If you want only have the fuel gauge and air temperature up there, then those will be your only 2 options. You can change that in the menu system. It's a pretty good system, pretty advanced. I think, like I said, I'm often resetting trip meters and that kind of thing, so I don't really love the system by which you have to do that. God, I don't love the system by which you find neutral either. Come on. It's not good. I'm going to shut the bike off and then I can find neutral, but it's not my favorite. Oh my God. Oh no. Jesus, don't look. Oh gosh. Oh no. Oh geez. Oh hell. Okay, there you have it. A daily ride on BMW's S1000RR. Okay, we can jump into Instagram questions. I can't answer all the questions that you people asked on Instagram. There's so many good questions. This is a good time to remind you that you can go to Common Tread at RevZilla.com and you can read Spurgeon Dunbar's first ride of the S1000RR. The link to that article is in the description of this video. All the updates they made from the previous model, as well as how the packages all work, how the ride modes are all set up, all that kind of stuff's a little bit easier to see in article form. So please do check that out if you're interested. First question from the Instagrams is from Skid Chowder, who asks, but what about luggage options? Great question, love this. Yeah, there's a lot of good luggage options for the S1000RR. My favorite is the S1000XR, which has luggage and a similar engine and excellent performance, better comfort, that kind of thing. So that's the luggage option I would recommend for the S1000RR. Next question is from Martin Perveka, who asks, if you're going to daily a superbike, is this the one, or are there superbikes which are more user-friendly? Or should you look for something like a Aprilia Tuono, which in my eyes is damn near a superbike without the main negatives? Yes. Yes, indeed. The S1000RR really impressed me as far as being usable and friendly and that kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, you saw how much of the performance we can use on the street, and not like it's hard to access it. It's just the performance level is so high. And with a Tuono, you get a lot of that. You really do. And you're more comfortable. So yeah, I think Martin's got a good point. And that's the direction that I would go. You know, if I had to get one bike, I would be perfectly happy with a Tuono at the racetrack. Next question is from Lorenzo LDNA, or maybe Lauren Zoldna. Lorenzo? I don't know. Anyway, question is, how does it differentiate from the Japanese leader bikes? Yeah, so I got a bunch of questions like this on Instagram, sort of like, is it missing its soul? Or, you know, how is it different than just getting a Kawasaki? And I guess at its core, the design is so similar, right? Then that's where the question comes from. But it feels different to me. It feels more raw and kind of open than a CBR 1000 or even a ZX10 to me. And I think that you also get luxury features. You know, I mean, you pay more for it, but you do get some stuff that you can't get with a ZX10 from the factory if you want, like heated grips and all that tunability in the ride modes and carbon wheels. And it has some stuff. It has some luxury features and some things that arguably make it different. And I think that if you're after that, you shouldn't apologize for it. You should just go for it because it feels unique in a certain way, I think. Next question is from Jussi Just, who asks, on paper, the Aprilia RS660 may not be a comparison to the BMW, but is that kind of bike maybe a better value package if you want a crotch rocket, which is a comfort compromise in the first place? I love this question. This is an interesting thing, right? So you want to look like you're riding a sport bike around, but you want to be comfortable, and you're like, what am I going to do with 200 horsepower anyway? Why not buy an $11,000 or $12,000 Aprilia RS660, which is pretty fast and has good performance capability, even if, you know, it's got 100 horsepower instead of 200, but like, whatever, you use 200 horsepower anyway. I think it's a great question. And I think the Aprilia is, in a lot of ways, what someone might be after when they get an S1000RR. Sure, you don't get the status, you don't get all the horsepower, but you will get more comfort, and you'll still get the racy looks and some good performance on a racetrack or on a twisty road. So yeah, Juicy Juiced, if I'm saying your name right, you're right on track. I love that line of thinking, and I think that's an interesting kind of outside the box way to look at what you'd be after when you get this bike. Last question of the day is from GB Nordhoff, who asks, do you feel like there's too much going on tech-wise? No, I don't. I think that all of the super highfalutin features that we dug into in the racetrack modes, where you can like tune these little things like a safe breaker, and I want this to be a little higher and I want that to be a little lower. That's what a superbike should deliver to a certain extent. And I don't find the electronic rider aids in general to be intrusive. That big hole in the power band is a bummer. And like I said, I don't know if that's a mechanical thing or if it's an emissions thing. I suspect it's the latter. As far as all the technology goes, this is the place for technology. If you don't want technology, don't come to the upper echelon of the superbike category. That's how I feel. And BMW has also dumbed it down with the sort of like basic ride modes of, I just want to put it in rain mode, click, 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 rain, I'm done. And so that's what they've done. It's not maybe exactly the way I would have designed the bike, but I think they did a good job having separate tiers. I want a super bike to ride on the street and I want it to do its own thing, or I want to tune the bejesus out of it with every little thing on the planet. So yeah, I don't think there's too much tech going on. I think that's what this is for. Okay. Thank you so much, as usual, for all of your Instagram questions. We're going to jump inside, put this sucker on the fresh 2022 Daily Rider Leaderboard, and then I'll let you go. Stay with me.
Yeah, all right, everybody, here we are at the Daily Rider Leaderboard, which of course has been wiped clean for 2022. But if you watch the update video, you know we have the 2021 and 2020 archive leaderboard next to it with all the stuff that we've ridden so far on Daily Rider. So the placement of the BMW S1000 RR on the Daily Rider Leaderboard is right at the top and at the bottom, being the only bike of the year. But we can reference the leaderboard here. And I can tell you that it's good for a sport bike, but not as good as, you know, all these ADVs. Suzuki V-Strom, no. Kawasaki Versys, no. Honda Africa Twin, no. The comparison, I think, is this RS 660 from Aprilia, which of course we talked about in the parking lot there. The RS 660 is similarly equipped with a basic set of safety features, you know, I mean, adjustable traction control, it's got a race mode, ABS and multi-levels, you know, it's pretty sophisticated, and it's half the price of the S1000 RR, and half the horsepower, as we talked about. But I think the S1000 RR finished below that, and then below that we got, yeah, eventually Yamaha R7. S1000 is better than that, I think, spicier and not less comfortable. Yeah, just below the RS 660, just above Honda CBR 500R is where the S1000 would land. So maybe we'll bump it down a little bit. We'll put it here, you know, a little reality check for that bike, which it does get a fire icon and a price icon. A little bit spicy, a little bit pricey, as we say here on Daily Rider. All right, I guess that's it. Still got some work to do with the graphics there. We haven't gotten our ducks in a row quite yet. We're working on it. It's a work in progress, just like this show has always been. We do have a more formal split of the two main kind of Daily Rider leaderboards. That's the best I can offer you. Thanks for hanging out. Don't tell anyone that you know that works for BMW that we rode the S1000 RR with carbon fiber rims down a dirt thing with mud, and I cleaned it already. It's gonna be fine. Don't worry about it. All right, everybody, I hope you learned something. I hope you had fun, and I very much hope to see you next time on Daily Rider. Ride safe.
Whoops, I was going down to get to first gear, but GP shift here, so I gotta go the other way. At least scrambles my brain a little bit. All right, here we go. First stop sign test. Oh, I stalled it. That's embarrassing. The person behind me thinks I'm new to this. I wonder if that guy's like, this guy obviously doesn't know how to ride a motorcycle. He's got an S1000 RR. What the heck's he doing?